y'all. I'm Dan Hamilton, Marine Corps veteran and host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. As always, the Next Gen Warrior Show is brought to you by Chairman George P. Bush and our dedicated staff at the Texas Veterans Land Board. Here at the Texas Veterans Land Board, we are proud to provide home loans, land loans, home refurbishment loans, as well as running 9 long-term skilled care facilities for veterans in their golden years here across the great state of Texas. On the Next Gen Warrior Show, I am proud to bring you success stories of veterans discussing programs and resources that can ease the transition into civilian life, as well as providing encouragement for those who might be struggling. Joining me today from sunny California is Antoinette Balta. She's a member of the California State Guard, as well as the executive director and co-founder of the Veterans Legal Institute. Antoinette, great to have you on the program today. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about VLI and what it is.
So Veterans Legal Institute is a pretty unique organization. We're a law firm, but we're nonprofit, which means that none of our veterans that we serve, which are all low income, homeless, at risk, and disabled, none of them ever receive a bill. And the reason attorneys step up to do this type of work is because we like to remove barriers to housing, healthcare, employment, and education, ultimately empower our veterans into self-sufficiency.
Yeah, it's a really incredible story, but I think your story begins before VLI was founded. So can you tell us a little bit about maybe your legal background and kind of what opened maybe your eyes to the veterans experience and maybe veterans who had, to some degree slipped through the cracks? What was kind of that the lead up to VLI being founded?
Absolutely. You know what? Everybody's got a journey and a story as to their why. And my why really starts from a very young age. My parents immigrated to the United States, and I really got just a, bundle of opportunity, as a woman growing up in the United States to do whatever I wanted. And my parents kept me very mindful of all of those opportunities. And oftentimes my mom would say, in this country, you can be anything you want. You can get an education. As long as a doctor, an attorney, or an engineer, you can pick any one of those. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't like blood.
She didn't set the bar very low, huh?
Yeah, I was like, I still in my older years don't know really what engineers do. So I'm like, attorney sounds cool. I like to debate and argue. Judge Judy's like right up my alley. So we'll do that. And it was really cool, that somebody invested in me and gave me a loan. So I was able to go to law school, and that was really cool. And from there, I had to work in private practice for a few years so I could pay down those loans. And when I was financially able, I really wanted to kind of pursue my dreams and passion, right? Like this idea of, can I have it all? Can I actually have a job that I love? And I'm really empathetic, although I'm A-type like most attorneys, but it's a rare breed where we're A-type and empathetic. And I thought I'd really love to work with homeless or mentally ill people because I feel like I'm not good at a lot of things, but I'm really good at that. Like I enjoy connecting with people in need and trying to kind of work with them and make them stronger and share my time with them and any resources that I can offer. So I applied to the Equal Justice Works AmeriCorps program, which is similar to Teach for America, but for attorneys. And I was awarded a 2-year fellowship to work at a local legal aid, doing general legal services, basically for vulnerable populations and organizations that serve those populations. So during that time, I was volunteering at an emergency shelter, which happened to be at a National Guard armory. And I noticed around, these clinics would happen like once a month, like late at night in these shelters, which are less than optimal. But I noticed out of every 10 I saw, 3 would be wearing like some sort of military regalia or like some indication that they had served. And I thought that was really weird because, all the veterans I know are just making it in life, right? Mm-hmm. They're doing better than their civilian counterparts. They're entrepreneurs, they're problem solvers. They lead Fortune 500 companies. And I thought, well, this is strange. I hadn't, considered this. And this was over a decade ago. So it was before, veterans was really a topic that people were discussing, right? So I went back to my supervisor at work and I said, you know what, I think there's an issue in terms of veteran homelessness, and it's unique to veterans and it's unique from their civilian counterparts. And can I change my fellowship? I'm not asking too much, but I would like to change my job description. Thanks for giving me a job and all my funding. And he looked at me and he kind of shook his head and he's like, look, if you can get the funding, you can do whatever you want. So I'm like, sweet. So I went to the AmeriCorps, to Equal Justice Works, and they converted I made the argument to them, I explained why, and they converted my fellowship to a veterans fellowship. So at that legal aid, I was able to start a program there. And I really loved working with the military population. It's kind of, in my mind, it was my way of also paying it forward for all the opportunities and blessings that I have. In a strange way, like I feel patriotic doing it. And I feel like I'm playing my part, my role, And after another year or two, I was like, we need an organization that is wholly committed to serving active service members, reservists, and veterans, because their issues are unique. And as an attorney and a zealous advocate, you really have to understand, you've got to speak the lingo, you've got to have that cultural competency in order to establish that rapport and gain their trust. And you can't have that, in my opinion, at least not to the extent that they deserve, right? You can't have the highest quality services if, you're helping out different populations. So it was kind of a leap of faith. And I talked to some people about it, and I got the Orange County Bar Association to kind of buy on to my idea. And they gave me a little bit of seed funding. And here we are almost 8 years later, and we've served over 8,000 veterans. And I have close to 20 team members. And we use over 200 volunteers a year. So we log in over 10,000 volunteer hours a year. So it's really been a community project and life-changing for me personally to really have the opportunity to enjoy using my education in a way that makes me feel like I'm participating and I'm contributing.
So I wanted to go back to the moment that you started to recognize the need, because that was going to be my next question of, was it a light bulb moment? And that's what we talk, I think, so many times with our guests about what is the thought process that leads them to pursue a certain career? What was the thought process that led them to go seek help or seek counseling? What was the thought process that led them to take that first step on the set of stairs that led them to where they wanted to go? And what stuck out to me was you saying, hey, I saw, 3 out of 10 veterans that came in, but then you took the step of action of saying, hey, I'm going to go talk to my supervisor. Was this multiple conversations that you had? And then you also had to sell the program, right? You had to sell them to say, I'm going to take this in a little bit of a different direction. And to me, that's always something critical for veterans to know after the military, is that you're not just going to be in your MOS when you get out of the service. You can get into an industry, or you can get into a company and then actually have the opportunity to create things once you're there. So can you go back and maybe talk about that a little bit more in depth?
Yeah, well, I think by my nature, I'm a problem solver as an attorney. That's what we really are supposed to be doing, right? We're trying to resolve issues and come to resolution between different parties. And so when I saw that there was a void in the system and there was a need that needed to be met, and one that I was very passionate about, I thought, okay, so one step at a time, how am I going to resolve this issue? Like, what
did you write it out? Like, are you somebody who's like, okay, I have an idea, I'm going to sketch this out, I'm going to make a business plan? Or did you just say, okay, I have the idea, I have my mental notes and I'm going to go do it?
Wow. Okay. Now so you're going to we're pointing out my OCD. Okay. So here's what really happened. Now that you've outed me to all of your listeners and followers, now everyone's going to know it's cool. I'm not ashamed. So I might be a little bit hyperactive in OCD. So what I did was, first I did a lot of research, and I was looking at veterans issues, what's going on in our nation, incarcerated veterans. Why are there over 200,000 Vietnam era veterans that are incarcerated till now? What's going on with veteran suicide? Why? And then I looked at what were the resources available, which were dismal in the legal arena. And so I used that information to kind of present it and be persuasive to my supervisor. And when I got his buy-in, I presented it to Equal Justice Works, which has historically been an incredible organization, one that I'm very proud to be an alumna of. In terms of when I decided to start Veterans Legal Institute, as I was practicing, I noticed that there were ways that certain things could be done better, right? Because when you have a client, you want to give your client the best representation. You want to be the best for that client. Even if your services are free, it doesn't mean that they should get subpar services or be set up with an attorney who doesn't really understand the background or why that client is in the place the client is in. So I did put together an incredible business plan, one that I'm very proud of. And I do have a degree in business from a long time ago. So it was an excellent way to play off of that degree. And I have a master's in law, emphasizing business and economics. So I had, my numbers there, and it made me feel good about myself that I did my due diligence. And I took that business plan and I approached multiple stakeholders in the community. I approached multiple potential funders. I was rejected multiple times. And so what I decided to do with that rejection was ask for feedback. And based on the feedback that I got, I would tweak things if I thought they made sense. And I just kept trying. And I was able to launch the organization despite the fact that, a lot of people said, nobody wants to fund attorneys. No one likes attorneys. No one understands what attorneys do. Why would someone homeless need an attorney? So I was able to kind of paint the picture through client testimonials and show them, the power of access to justice. And so, in life, sometimes you gotta look at what you're good at and your skill set. And sometimes you have to redefine yourself, and you have to do it fearlessly, and you have to be bold about it and be unapologetic. And you're going to face rejection, and that's okay. That's part of the process. Instead of that pushing me down, I kind of just used it to fuel me, to make me feel stronger and more motivated to press forward, because this organization is something that I innately really believe in. And I thought, if it is worth something to the community, and if there is value in it, after the first couple of years, it will continue on, because people will see it and they'll want to be a part of it, because they'll recognize the good and the impact that it's having. And if it's not, then people won't. And, I'll move on to something else, and I'll contribute in different ways.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned the details that you took and the steps that you took to present it, because I think that's, if you're looking from an outside perspective, you might go, oh man, she just had this idea and then the idea worked out. But I think it's critical for veterans to know, if you want something on this side of the uniform, you have to put in the legwork. You have to write out either the business plan, you have to develop the relationships. So I think even just filling that context in to say, hey, I did get rejected. These are the steps that I took, is incredibly healthy for veterans to hear. And I think for our non-service peers as well, that you paired multiple skills that you had, relationships that you had, professional relationships that you had to make that really work. And I'm interested to know too, if a veteran's thinking about going through a similar process, maybe in a different industry, or wants to create something, build something, or is just interested, just generally in your story, was there a time where you got that rejection and you said, hey, I'm getting a little bit too frustrated with this, maybe I should hang it up, and what kept you going?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm human, so it was very difficult. A lot of people look at the organization, they think like, wow, you've done so well and you have it made, or and I tell them, like, we are the Bernie Sanders of nonprofits, meaning we don't get huge lump sums of money from the government to keep us going. I mean, we really get a lot of donations that are small. We have former clients that give us $5 a month out of the, goodness of their heart, which is so meaningful. But do I get frustrated? Yes.
Right.
More than I want to admit to, but that's an emotion, a feeling that I allow myself to have. And once I've processed it, it allows me to think more clearly about, okay, what are my available options? What are the available resources? And how am I going to move past it? Does it make sense to move past it? Do I accept things the way they are? Do I want to make a change? And if so, how am I going to do it? So in terms of multiple times of this happening, there was one time that sticks out in my mind. And there's a Vietnam era veteran who's a very successful entrepreneur. And I had presented my proposal to him, and he's involved with many nonprofits. And he said to me, you know what? I think it's really nice what you're doing. And I think you're smart, you're an attorney, but there's so many nonprofits out there. So I think you should just, work at a different one instead of starting your own. And, because it's going to be too hard. You're not going to be able to launch it because nobody likes attorneys and nobody really understands the impact of free legal. It's better to give blankets to homeless veterans, or, you know, food or things of that nature. And it hurt me because it kind of like shut down my dream. And this was somebody that whose opinion I really valued, right? It wasn't a stranger. It's somebody I care about and I still care about till this day. And I eventually went back to him and I said, you know, I appreciate what you said and I understand it. Like, and it does make sense. But I think I'm going to take the gamble on this one because I've really prepared myself and I've got other stakeholders in place, and I still want you to support me.
Yeah. Well, you stuck to your guns, which I think is such
I
a
did.
yeah, you stuck to your guns.
And he still does 8 years later. And every time I see him, he's like, you know, I didn't think you were going to be able to do it. And I feel really bad. And in my 75 years of life, you know, there's few mistakes I've made and you're one of them.
So you get to remind him of that every now and then. That might feel pretty spiking the football.
You know, it's not, I knew what he was saying came from his experience and I understood that the odds were against me.
Sure.
So it actually really motivated me to kind of pull together additional resources just to make sure I was grounded and I had the right support that I needed. You know, like he put me on notice. So there was a value in his constructive criticism. And it is nice that, you know, every year he supports the organization when we have events. He always attends and he's an incredible supporter. So, but you know, that rejection, you know, it's not easy to take it lightly.
Yeah. So can you, you know, when you pair that sort of rejection that you're feeling, but also the desire that you have to build something, I'm also interested in um, how you pair your technical skill set, I guess, as a lawyer. And we talk about this on the show. What are your technical skills? What are your soft skills? So maybe if you don't mind me identifying maybe some of those interpersonal skills that you have of processing the rejection, letting it go, moving on to the next one, which I think is a critical step for success, really in any venture, especially after the military, when you're either going out for job interviews or you're trying to get into school or you're looking for a trade craft. But the technical skill side, which you had, was you trained as a lawyer, you trained as an attorney. Can you talk about maybe pairing those two things, those two skill sets, as you build a company, or excuse me, build a nonprofit, build a company, because you're technically trained as a lawyer, and you did say you had some economics and business background, but how much of it was new as you were building something that you were not classically trained to do?
That's a great question. The first thing I'll point out is that everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and some people call their weaknesses opportunities for growth. I'm of the mindset where I take my weaknesses and I put them over there and I focus on my strengths. So I really like to focus on what I'm good at, which are very few things. So it's easy for me to focus on them, right? And what I enjoy. And typically what you enjoy is what you're good at. And all the other things that I'm not good at, if those are things that I can farm out or delegate or hire or find a volunteer, that's what I do. So I try to really prioritize my strengths so I can push forward with the greatest impact. And my strengths would be probably connecting with people, empathizing for the cause, being a problem solver, acting as an ambassador for the organization, apart from the practice of law. Because the practice of law is very technical. It can be most of the time very black and white. So it's easy sometimes to find lawyers to practice law, but it's more difficult to find a lawyer who can understand the client and where the client is coming from and make the client feel comfortable, because a lot of our clients come to us with very personal emotional issues, you know, issues related to military sexual trauma, issues related to their traumatic brain injury, issues related to their post-traumatic stress. And so to be able to receive that is something, it's a skill, right? Not everybody can receive that or hear that openly and make someone comfortable in sharing those stories. So I like to focus on that. That's what God gave me. So that's what I go with. I am not good at too many things to list. Your show isn't long enough. So I focus on what I'm good at. And so taking those skills and kind of working them and just identifying other people's strengths and helping them build their strengths. So if I see someone has the ability to do something, or they're getting there, or they can be trained in it, I like to invest in my people and my team to build that up, to see, you know, what they like doing, what they're passionate about. Because I think when you really encourage people to pursue what they enjoy and what they're innately good at doing, they perform.
Yeah.
And that's the difference to me of being successful and a passion run organization that's successful versus just getting by day to day.
So that ability to pull out that passion in someone and get them to focus on a mission, get them to focus on, their work on a day-to-day basis. It must have been pretty difficult during the pandemic. I know here, we're getting out and we're around people a little bit more, and you're able to talk with your team again. But in a Zoom setting, as we're talking now, as a leader of this organization, how were you able to reach out to your team and still make sure that you injected them with that passion and to make sure that the mission was still front of mind?
That's a great question. I think that the pandemic has been an unexpected lesson for everybody in business, right? How do
Yeah.
you connect with somebody over a camera?
Yeah.
How do you keep a team that's growing? How do you keep that team together? How do you keep people motivated? So first, I'll say credit to my team because they are so passion oriented and they love what they do. We were at an advantage at Veterans Legal Institute because we hire military spouses that have traditionally worked remotely because they deploy, or they get sent to different places with their spouses. And I am a big fan of hiring military spouses. I think they are the hardest working, like least tapped in resource. And if I could get more, I would, because they make incredible attorneys. So we were already on the Zoom bandwagon, and we have multiple staff calls a week. Some of them are certain teams that we have identified, and some of them are all staff calls, so we can all be on the same page together. So we were able to transition pretty much overnight into Zoom, not just so the staff could stay strong and connected, but because we run so many mobile legal clinics, meaning, we go to veteran hotspots like the VA hospital in Long Beach and, Saddleback College that has over 1,200 student veterans and other places. We were able to connect with all of them almost immediately and say, we don't want to stop our clinics.
Yeah.
Your population needs us. We're here. This is a free service. How can we set up a Zoom? We've got all the technology. Can you just make the appointments? Can you let your constituency know? And so the idea was, and the phrase that the staff kept saying is, no veteran can fall between the cracks. Just because we can't be there in person doesn't mean that we can't service them. We just have to be a little bit more creative. And I don't want to brag, but my staff is pretty awesome. Like, we are all really fun. And so we still, during COVID, we did a few events together in person that were spaced safely. And most of them were hikes. We would go outdoor hiking. And during those hikes, it was meant to be social, and it was meant for our mental health, because our work is also emotionally exhausting, because we deal with people in crisis daily. And that's not hard, on top of the pandemic and our own personal issues. And we could talk about work, but kind of be near each other.
Yeah.
So it was a really beautiful way, I think, to come together and try to maintain our sanity and our work product so that we could show up for our clients who mean so much to us, even though we had our own personal struggles.
Yeah. Can you talk about the mental resiliency that also goes into, dealing with those difficult situations? Like, what do you do to steel yourself against, those crisis moments, those situations, because I actually sat down today with a good friend of mine who just retired from Austin EMS. And, he's Master Chief in the Navy and been on the front lines in the military, and then comes back and decides to serve as EMS, as a paramedic here in Austin. And we have talked about that, with him, about like, how do you steel yourself? What do you do to remain mentally healthy during a challenging time and to keep your emotional reserves up so that you can serve the people around you? I think that maybe as an entirety for our society as a whole, we are prone to kind of just running till the gas runs out and then kind of falling on our face, I know I do that at times, and I'm just interested to know what are maybe the habits or the routines or the processes that you go to make sure that you can be that leader for your team, that you can continue to show up and fight every day on behalf of these veterans.
That's a great question. We all process trauma differently, and we all deal with things differently, and it's never a fair comparison to say, well, she got over it, why didn't you get over it?
Mm-hmm.
And you see that in different people who may have shared the same experience, but they respond to it differently. So our work is at Veterans Legal Institute very emotionally driven, right? Because oftentimes we're fighting for the underdog. We're fighting for somebody who is an amputee that's struggling to access their health care, or a survivor of military sexual trauma who he was separated from the military with a less than honorable discharge because he or she disengaged because of that trauma, or somebody who's getting evicted from their home because they have a service dog. So you get emotionally vested in your clients because you care about them and you see their plight, and you realize that, oh, because this person doesn't have money, or because they have mental health issues, they're not going to access justice. So they're going to get, the short end of the stick because they can't afford an attorney that charges $500 an hour. So how do we deal with that on the emotional level? And that's a really tricky question. And I won't share what my team does because everybody, as I said, processes differently. But what I do personally, and I've been in the public interest space for close to a decade, is I've become I've really leaned into my faith in this last 10 years. I mean, I've always been a grateful person. I think my parents made it very clear that we don't get to waste the opportunity we got, because we're here in a country that gives you whatever you're willing to work for. And that's a blessing that people fail to recognize because they haven't seen it any other way. They haven't experienced life in another way. But I think that I've leaned into my faith. So I've been, whether I'm going to church in person or online, that I pull strength from that. It gives me a feeling of peace and knowing that I think there's something greater and I can give it to God. I also believe, apart from the importance of faith and spirituality, I believe in the importance of your physical fitness. So, for example, even with my staff, when I call them wellness days, I'll take them out for PT.
Yeah, there you go. Gotta get them up in the morning and go run them.
Right? We'll go to the gym together. We'll do hikes. We invite our volunteers to come. I like to be outdoors. And I think that's really important in my case, because I do have a high stress and load
environment. Yeah.
I work out 5 days a week. And I like to start my days after I drop my kids off at school. My first stop is usually the gym. And I also do things like I get physical therapy. I get massage. I do things. I take care of myself so that I can take care of others. So it's that analogy of, when you're sitting on the airplane, they're like, in case of an emergency. And then you're like, wait, what emergency are we talking about? And that thing falls. And I'm like, why would that fall? What would be happening? And you're like, before you put it on your child, you have to put it on yourself. And it kind of shows you, well, for me, two things. The first is, well, I have 2 kids. Which one do I pick?
So I gotta make a tough decision. Yeah.
It is, right? I'm like, who's going to take care of me when I'm old? It's a hard decision. And then the second one is wow, if I'm not okay, I can't help others. I really got to take care of me. No one else is going to take care of me. So I really do try to be mindful of my own wellness, and I try to promote that in the culture at Veterans Legal Institute. So if somebody's not feeling well, take a mental health day. There's always work. It's never going to end. So if you need a day, if you're not feeling well, if you do it. If you need a break, take it. You've got to kind of be honest with yourself. And so it's been, and I think through that reflection that comes to me through my faith, that reflection has helped me realize, we just have to give each other grace.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of stress.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you reflected on both of those things, your faith as well as you being physically active, because that's something that we try to preach to the veterans community is you have to do those things so that you can take care of yourself, so that then in the rest of your life, whether that's professionally or whether that's personally, you can be the best version of yourself. And I think that lesson and that routine for people, if that is prioritized after you get out of the military for veterans, it will help you handle the stress of, the rejection of, a school, or the rejection at work, or difficult circumstances. Those are kind of the foundations and the building blocks. I think specifically for myself, after I got out of the Marine Corps, the last thing I want to do is wake up in the morning in PT. But I know it's a critical part of your mental health as well as your physical health. I'm interested to ask you too, for a veteran who might be interested in going into law, what your advice would be for them.
I think the law it's a great profession. I would suggest anyone who's considering it to shadow an attorney. There are different types of law, just like you could be the best brain doctor, doesn't mean you're a good heart doctor. So in comparison, if you're looking at the law, you might want to shadow a criminal law attorney, then attorneys that do civil work, maybe a public interest attorney. So you can kind of see, hey, is this an environment that I would enjoy myself, or I can envision myself being in? And a lot of attorneys out there would love to mentor veterans. So I would say, don't be shy in reaching out. I have cold called attorneys in other states, literally cold called, got on the phone, got a list of attorneys from other states and been like, I have a veteran in your state. I cannot assist because I'm not licensed. This veteran needs help. I see that you're at the top of your practice in whatever area it is. Are you willing to do this pro bono, even though you don't know me? And there's always rejection, but I always find one.
Yeah.
So people want to, especially those who didn't serve, really want to pay it forward because, and I think it's really cool as a veteran to know that, a lot of people do appreciate the service of the veteran. They just don't know how to show that appreciation outside of the, hey, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
But some people are like, hey, I've got the skill set. I'm an attorney. I'm a doctor. I'm a dentist. Can I pay it forward with my talent or my skill? And I think that's a really cool way to give back.
No, that's excellent. Well, I appreciate you taking some time today to be on the Next Gen Warrior Show and discuss the Veterans Legal Institute, as well as your personal and professional approach to work, as well as approach to your personal life. I think there's some really incredible lessons that can be taken away, not just for the veterans community, but the community at large. Before we close it out today, I just wanted to give you the last word. If there was anything that you would like to leave our audience with.
Sure. I would say that everybody has a different experience. And sometimes when service members transition into civilian life, that change can be hard, it can be difficult, and it might not be. And it could depend on your support system. So I guess what I would share with everybody, based on just in my personal life, when I've had change or I've had to deal with new situations, be mindful of your blessings first before you start looking at all the struggle. So every morning, take 2 minutes and just say, I am grateful for, and list it out, even out loud verbally, which I do every day almost, just so you can stay mindful and present and have a good energy about you. And then second is, it's going to be frustrating sometimes. Don't give up because, you're going to go through, it's a numbers game, rejection, boom, you'll hit it. And so, keep your eyes on the prize and in whatever you do, find the right mentor and let people help you now. And in the future, you can pay it forward and help the next person that's in your shoes today.
Well, Antoinette, I appreciate you being a guest on the Next Gen Warrior Show, and I appreciate you paying it forward for so many veterans who are in need of legal assistance there in California, as well as around the country, and appreciate you being a guest here on the Next Gen Warrior Show with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity. This was fun.
Absolutely. On behalf of Chairman George P. Bush and our dedicated staff at the Texas Veterans Land Board, we will be back here next Monday. We hope you will join us. Please subscribe, iTunes, podcast, Spotify, on YouTube, as well as our social media pages. We will see you here back next week.
Follow us on Instagram at Voices of Vets, on Twitter at Voice of Veterans, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Voices of Veterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior Podcast.